So the most important shift we're seeing is that financial stress is no longer abstract. It's changing behavior. Under that pressure, people are making very real trade-offs. They're delaying medical care, they're reducing retirement savings, and in some cases, scaling back on benefits coverage. And I think individually, those decisions, they make total sense. But at scale, they're starting to create longer-term risks.
Welcome to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm Sandy Laycox, Editor-in-Chief of Leader's Edge. In this podcast, sponsored by Prudential and recorded on-site at the 2026 Employee Benefits Leadership Forum, I talk with Jon Trevisan, Vice President and Head of Distribution for Group Insurance at Prudential. To start, Jon breaks down the key findings from Prudential's 2026 Benefits and Beyond Research Series, which is focused on the future of work.
Let me start by just laying the groundwork with Prudential Group Insurance, if I could, for a minute. Our leading group benefits program protects 22 million employees and their families nationwide. And we offer, produce, and distribute a range of group life, disability, voluntary stop-loss, and corporate and trust-owned life insurance through our brokerage and consultant partners. Each year, the Benefits and Beyond research that we do helps to keep a pulse on what's changing across the workplace benefits landscape, so employers can really better understand and respond to their workforce's evolving needs. Mm-hmm. This year is the third year in a row that we've done this. We took a hiatus over COVID, but this is the third year that we've picked it back up. And in January, we interviewed 760 employers and just over 3,000 employees.
Wow.
So we're excited about the volume of people, and we feel like it's a pretty good cross reference and cross section of the sentiment that's out there in the workforce. So, in my travels across the country, meeting with brokers and consultants and employers, it's clear that rising medical costs are putting significant pressure on employers and employees. And what we're seeing, both in the market and in our conversations with brokers and employers, is that rising costs have moved beyond a benefits issue. And really, this is now a workforce issue. Mm-hmm. So the goal of the first Benefits and Beyond study, or this segment of Benefits and Beyond for 2026, was to understand how real that pressure is, and how much it's actually changing employee behavior, and what that means for employers trying to manage cost, support their workforce, and stay competitive. And what we found is the financial stress is in part due to rising medical costs. And it's far-reaching, and it's interconnected because it's impacting employees both financially, physically, socially, and mentally. And that is significant. Yeah. That is absolutely significant. Yeah. As far as the main topics and kind of themes, I'll say, for what we found from this study, there were really four. Mm-hmm. The first is that financial stress has wide-ranging implications. The second is that rising medical costs are an issue for employers and employees, and a big driver of that stress. The third is that employers are addressing this in a variety of ways, and how they respond has real implications for workforce outcomes. And then the fourth is there's a big communications and education gap between what employers believe they are doing and what employees are feeling.
I have to say there's probably no better time to be looking at this topic, as we hear all the time that affordability, healthcare coverage, and all of these things are really affecting the workforce. So let's dig in further a little bit into your first finding, which is the huge financial strain that employees are under. Tell us, and you mentioned there are wide-ranging implications. So let's talk about those and the trade-offs that you all found employees are having to make, and how it is affecting their mental, physical, social, all of those factors.
Yeah, absolutely. So the most important shift we're seeing is that financial stress is no longer abstract. It's changing behavior. And in our study, 68% of employees say they've experienced financial stress in the past year. And for many, it's significant. In fact, 47% said they have more economic uncertainty this year than they did 12 months ago. Wow. That's a big number.
Yeah.
Under that pressure, people are making very real trade-offs. They're delaying medical care, they're reducing retirement savings, and in some cases, scaling back on benefits coverage. What we found specifically is that 18% of our respondents said they put off medical care. 26% said that they either stopped or reduced their retirement savings. And then 7% have delayed retirement, including 22% of baby boomers. And I think individually, those decisions, they make total sense, right? They're rational responses to the immediate pressure that they are finding themselves in. But at scale, they're starting to create longer term risks. When people delay care, issues can become more complex and costly later. When savings drop, financial security erodes over time. And when retirement is pushed out, it impacts workforce mobility and long-term planning for employers. So from an employer standpoint and an employee standpoint, the cost of delaying medical care means it's going to become more acute. It could be more significant. Yeah. If employees are delaying retirement savings, that has a compounding effect over time. And if it's this year, that means that there's 1 year on compounding that isn't going to happen over 20, 30 years. If it's 2 or 3 or 4 years in a row, that has significant impact. And then if people are, as a result, not able to retire, what does that do to the employer who's looking to provide new opportunities for younger individuals in the organization and who are trying to retain them by showing them the opportunity to advance in a career in the organization? So it isn't just about financial strain as a sentiment. It's really about how that strain is actively reshaping employee behavior and ultimately the workforce.
Right. And you see all of the college grads struggling to find jobs as well. So when you think about it that way, it really does hurt on both ends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as you see individuals who are staying in the workforce longer, even those mid-career people who are looking to say, all right, well, what's my next step?
Right.
Those steps might not be as available as they were before as a result of the individuals who are needing to stay employed as a result of the economic uncertainty and economic stress they're facing.
Yeah. Now, I would assume that, of course, all of these factors would affect lower income workforce more. But when you looked at sort of a wider swath of employees, did you find that it was employees who were not necessarily, entry level pay were also struggling with the financial strain?
Absolutely. And we looked at it not just in terms of the economic diversity, but we also looked at it based off of the diversity in terms of what generation they're in. Mm-hmm. And what we found is that many of the concerns and trade-offs that people are making are somewhat similar, but the percentage of individuals who are making those trade-offs differs pretty considerably depending on where they are, in their, what generation they are. So you have younger people who are perhaps, most focused on childcare and most focused on the financial consequences of that. You have people who are later in life whose children may have already gone off on their own, who are, now planning on doing more to save for retirement, who are having challenges doing that.
We then discuss how employers are responding to these trends, which strategies have proven most effective, and how brokers can guide their clients through difficult benefits decisions.
Sure. Well, employers are definitely responding, largely because they're facing the same pressures. Nearly 9 out of 10 employers in our study reported medical cost increases of at least 5%. And for many, it's much higher. 31% said that they reported a medical cost increase of over 15% wow. for their employer-sponsored programs. So we're seeing organizations take a range of actions, adjusting how benefits are funded, increasing deductibles, shifting more cost to employees, and taking a hard look at the suite of benefits that they offer. And again, those are all rational decisions in the moment. But what really matters is how those decisions play out over time. Organizations that are navigating this most effectively aren't just focused on managing costs. They're also looking at how those changes impact employee behavior, engagement, and long-term outcomes. And they're taking the opportunity to address those challenges in a holistic way rather than in isolation. So integrating their approach so that they're not just focusing on the medical cost increase as an example, but really how do I care for the entire well-being of my employee population in all of the areas we've talked about, financial, social, physical, and mental, as they address the medical cost increase.
It's a lot on their shoulders.
It is. It definitely is. And because at scale, a lot of cost decisions can influence whether employees seek care, how they use benefits, and how supported they feel. And that's where the real workforce impact starts to show up. Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the benefit decisions that are being made. How can employers, and this is really for brokers who are advising them, how can they best help them and guide them as they try to figure out which benefits to keep, what's most effective for their workforce?
Yeah, so it's interesting because one of the more interesting findings that is employers aren't all moving in the same direction, right? And even with similar cost pressures, we see organizations adding and removing the same types of benefits, and in part that depends on A, the starting point of the employer, and B, their overall human capital strategy, which is something that is top of mind, I know, and a key area of focus for brokers and consultants as they engage with their clients. So the starting point, I think, is really one of the things that's most important. And then based off of that and the human capital strategy, developing the overall go forward approach is to best address that. But I'd say with the varied approaches that employers are taking, it tells us that there's no single playbook here.
Yeah.
Employers are making decisions based on what they're trying to protect, whether it's cost, retention, employee experience, or all three, and where they're starting from. And what is most valued by employees, probably most important. Some are expanding. You have employers that have 5 generations in the workforce, and they're needing to care for all 5 of those generations. And some of the things that we found in our study is that what is most important to each of those generations can be very different.
Yes.
Some are considering point solutions. Some are looking at alternative delivery models. Some are curbing benefit offerings, and some are actually expanding benefit offerings. So, that really is where the expertise of the broker and the consultant can come in to understand the nuances of that and really understand what the employer is trying to achieve on behalf of not only the organization, but also their employees, to be able to craft the right strategy to allow them to achieve their objectives and be able to do it and continue to operate their business as efficiently and profitably as possible. And I think that's really where the brokers and consultants play just a critical role in helping translate that workforce insight into benefit strategies.
When looking at benefits ROI, Jon shares his thoughts on how to evaluate value and the large disconnect between how employers and employees perceive benefit value.
In this environment, value isn't about what's trending, it's about what protects employees when something goes wrong. We see that clearly in areas of income protection. When financial stress is high, benefits that protect income become essential. They're not optional. On the flip side, value isn't just about what's offered, it's about whether employees can actually understand it and use it. And this is key because our findings show a big disconnect here related to employee understanding and the support they feel from their employers. If a benefit is hard to navigate or communicated infrequently, it may show up as low value if it's recognized at all as a benefit that the employer even offers, even if it's strategically important. So the opportunity is to evaluate benefits based on how they show up in real moments that matter, and how to create a strategy to frequently communicate that conveys the value to employees, not only frequently, but at the right time. I'd say in days of past, it was when you were a new hire and at an annual enrollment is when you would hear about your employee benefits. And those employers that, again, look at it from a more integrated standpoint, that are looking to more frequently communicate. And I would say communicate in a way that will allow an employee at the time of need to recognize that that value is there, that benefit is there, is critically important to the success of, the relationship that first of all, I'd say the time and energy that the employee and money that the employer is putting into the actual benefit program, because it's an absolute ton of money that employers spend, wanting to make sure that they get the right value and recognition from employees that, yes, this is there for me. This is there to support me. This is there to help me. And being aware of it and understand it will allow them to be able to do that. And I think that will ultimately increase the value that employees see as the support that they're getting. So I spend a lot of time with brokers and consultants and employers, and a lot of discussions this year have been about how do we communicate more effectively. We're spending all of this money, we're spending all of this time, we're developing these strategies. How do we make sure that all of that effort and the goodwill that we are investing in to benefit our employees is actually recognized and, most importantly, utilized by employees?
Yeah.
And so that is definitely one of the clearest and most important findings in the study is that gap. And employers believe they're doing a great job in supporting employees, but that's not what employees are feeling. And we see meaningful gaps across, the financial, the physical, the mental well-being. What that tells us is that even when organizations are making the right investments, and this is a lot of the conversations that I've had, employees aren't always experiencing that impact. And a couple of examples of that in our study, 82% of employers felt that as an organization, they do a good job of communicating how best to use their medical benefits in a way that minimizes costs for employees. 49% of employees agreed. So that's a 33% gap. A second key disconnect, I think, is that 75% of employers believe that employees understand how they use their medical benefits impacts premiums and costs in future years. 53% of employees agree. That's a 22% gap. So when employers feel like they're doing the right things to demonstrate how an employee can utilize the benefit to ultimately save the employer, but more importantly, the employee money and reduce future healthcare spend, and they're doing that well, and employees don't believe that's the case, that's a huge opportunity, especially with the medical trend that we're seeing and the overall macro environment of the financial uncertainty that employees feel.
We then discuss the role of technology in helping to generate more personalized benefits experiences.
I do think that as technology continues to advance, and it's advancing at such a quick pace, that there is a huge opportunity for that. We're already seeing that in terms of some of the technology capabilities to help employees better understand their benefits. A lot of that, frankly, is being done at time of enrollment. But I do think that there is a lot of opportunity from a technology standpoint to do that. But I think the other component to that, and I think the employers that ultimately are most successful in this are going to be the ones that confirm and validate with their employees. What do they feel? Is the communication gap that I just described in those two instances consistent with what their employees feel? And are they asking that question of their employees or those questions? Because I think the more they understand their employee population and what they're feeling and what they perceive, the better they are going to be prepared to work with their consultant and broker to say, okay, now that we understand what our employee population is feeling and perceiving, how do we create that communication and engagement and education strategy to be able to ultimately bridge that gap?
Finally, we discuss the key trends Prudential will look to pull into future research in this series.
So our benefits and beyond surveys over the last couple of years have kind of built off of each other as we progress. And yes, we obviously take the opportunity to look at some emerging trends and delve into that. But we do try and keep some consistency in terms of what we're asking in order to determine are some of the things that we've previously reported on changing. But your technology question is one that is very timely because the first study sets the foundation, the one we're talking about today, for broader themes that we're continuing to explore. And the cost pressure and financial stress is really the first component of that. And that is expanded into how these forces shape trust, culture, and future workforce. The two areas that we're focused on next are how organizations navigate rapid technology and AI adoption, and do that while building employee trust. So ultimately, this work is about helping organizations move beyond broad assumptions and make more precise, informed decisions about how to support employees and build a more resilient workforce over time.
That was Jon Trevisan, Vice President and Head of Distribution for Group Insurance at Prudential, talking with us on site at the 2026 Employee Benefits Leadership Forum. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. For more Leaders Edge podcasts, go to leadersedge.com.